What do you think about Peter Thiel? You think he's the
Um,
Antichrist? I think he's the Antichrist. So they're building killer robots, basically. That's what Palantir is doing right now. It's building killer robots for the Pentagon. But if you are against that, you're the Antichrist. And he's walking around the Vatican. He's parading around making that argument. I think he's the Antichrist. If you're pointing at other people saying they're the Antichrist, I think you're the Antichrist.
This is Extracted with your hosts, George Nguyen and Alex Simmons.
Today's show, let's move away from all the broader international geopolitical discussions that we've had. And I think it's taken over a lot of the media. But I think what's being seen, but not heavily discussed, right, is how AI is displacing workers. We hear all these talks about AI eventually replacing people, but I think when we look at the data itself, and I think every American, just anecdotally, right, just can look around and they can see already their neighborhoods and their neighbors have changed. And a lot of it has to do with the way AI is displacing people. It's not like the Rust Belt, right, where we saw physical factories close down. Here we're seeing this slow creep of layoffs for optimization and all that stuff. It's kind of more nebulous, right? Because it's like in pockets around the country. But yeah, let's talk about that.
No,
And
and it's killing the middle class. It's what they're talking about now. It's just affecting white collar jobs. And people think, oh, white collar, those are the managers. We want them gone. But really, that's not what they mean by white collar. Is more like the entry level admin work, which is recent college graduates. So all of a sudden, you have all these recent college graduates that can find jobs.
well, is that Alex Karp, right, from the CEO of Palantir, right, recently just told everybody, I have the quote here, right? This technology disrupts humanity's trained, largely democratic voters and makes their economic power less and increases the economic power of vocational trained, working class, often male working class voters.
For the next
That's
5 years only. But what's going to happen in the next 5 years, you're going to see factory jobs are going to start being replaced by robots.
well,
In 5 years, we're not talking
yep.
10, we're not talking 2 decades, we're talking in 5 years.
Talk about blue collar workers, right? I think there's a lot of hype and glorifications of plumbers, electricians, right? Will be quote the next LeBron James, right? But let's be realistic. What they're hyping are roles that are building out data centers, right? You look at the facts on the ground, right? More Americans can't afford their home, right? So if they can't afford a home, they don't need to hire these plumbers to come in and fix their plumbing, right? Because they don't have a home to own. This would probably these plumbers and electricians probably work for all the private equity firms that own a lot of American homes now. And so even the jobs of these blue collar jobs and service jobs that are being glorified right now are going to disappear once the data centers are built. That's the fact.
What happens is we need to increase the resilience of our national grids, right? Because the data centers rely on these national grids for electricity. So that resilience needs to be rebuilt fast.
Yep.
But what happens is we don't have robots right now to fix the national grids. So we need electricians right away. However, going back again over the next 5 years, a lot of these jobs that we're trying to get people to start getting engineering degrees and become electrical engineers. And in 5 years, those jobs are not going to be there because they're going to be replaced by robots.
Mm-hmm.
And even with data centers today, within the data centers, you go to these communities and it's like, oh, data centers need jobs of people to operate them, which is like one or two people that need to check things. It's like, well, they'll need security guards. That's not true. Hey, you're looking at, it's in the news right now. Most of the biggest data centers in America, they purchased those $300,000 Chinese robots, like the dogs.
Yep.
So they're actually purchasing, so they're being patrolled by those dogs now. So they don't need security guards. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen it. And it's not just the data centers definitely is an obvious location, right? But we're also seeing them be introduced to job sites, right? Construction sites so that they can monitor or surveillance, right? What's happening and if there are liabilities that occur, right? It's CYA, right? Cover your ass, right? And we're going to see more of these robots creeping into workplaces. That's look more intrusive than just those security cameras that hang on the ceiling, right?
Well, U.S. Navy is cutting maintenance contracts as well because they're replacing those maintenance jobs with robots as well. So they have now these robots that can actually climb ships, basically, and then look for damages and help and assist with maintenance as opposed to having to rely on humans for those. So US Navy is moving towards replacing humans with robots as well when it comes to maintenance. So those blue collar jobs, they're trying to say they're safe. They're not safe at all.
And I think it's important for us to look at what's happening on the ground now, right? Because the pain is real. People are being furloughed. People are being laid off from their jobs right now. And it has, for me, flashbacks of the Great Recession, right? When I think new graduates came out in 2009 into a market that wasn't hiring. And some of the new data that's coming out, right, where it's looking at, this is the Forbes Senate Group report that came out recently that showed that, 30% of graduates from the 2005 were able to find a job shortly after graduation, right? But the vast majority, a third of them, 33%, right, were not able to find jobs in their field of study and end up being underemployed or unemployed. And that trend is actually more disturbing when you go back in the same report, right? 2004 cohort of graduates, only 41% of them actually secured a job in a field that they studied. And again, the remainder either unemployed, underemployed, or went to graduate school, aka racking up more debt, right? Hoping to secure a higher degree that will offer more mobility upwards, right? So that these trends are disturbing because it reminds me of the 2008 financial crisis. But I think long term, what we're seeing right now, and I don't know when it's going to end. I'm not sure if it's going to end. This whole degree inflation, right, where we have graduates with advanced degrees competing for jobs that require bachelor's degrees, and then bachelor degrees displacing applicants who would traditionally require a high school degree to acquire entry level work. So this kind of shift, or they call it degree inflation, right, is going to have a lot of negative impact on the middle class. And we're seeing that. It's hollowing out the middle class. What are your thoughts on that? These are just some of the data points that I came across that were just jarring to me.
If you look at all of the big corporations, they're looking at doing job cuts. And what I found to be very obscene was when I was looking at Amazon. And Amazon, they came out and they said, we want to become the biggest startup in the world. They're like one of the biggest companies in the world right now, right? So it's like, what do you mean you want to become a biggest startup in the world? You're already like this huge corporation. Turns out what they meant is we want to fire everybody. Literally. So they hire 1.5 million people. Over 1 million people working for Amazon, whether it's full-time or part-time, are working in the United States alone. They want to fire all of them. So that's what it's like. So now we have this concept. We're going to become the biggest startup in the world by having robots replacing everybody. And that's just like one, right? So you kind of wonders, firing everybody, then who's making any money? If you can't afford to purchase anything, because you figure out how capitalism would work from the perspective of these great corporations. If you are producing, but there's nobody there to be a consumer, because you need consumers to buy whatever you're producing. Who are you producing for?
It definitely feels like they're on a suicide mission, right?
Yeah, I mean, destroy capitalism. If you're firing everybody in America, I was like, well, jobs are still going to be there produced, but not going into by who? To do what?
Yeah.
What are people going to get paid for? Like, well, we don't know. The government's going to figure it out.
UBI, right?
Oh,
we joke
the
about that, right?
the government
Like,
will figure it out. Yeah. So the
yeah.
government has been firing.
It's supposed to be
it's-
laissez-faire too, right? We're supposed to be laissez-faire, right? Minimum government intervention. This is what capitalism and libertarians have been, decades, right? So now well, the government will figure it out. It's kind of funny and ironic.
New will be created. Boom. If everybody's replacing labor with robots,
Yeah.
and you maintain the robots, it's like, okay, firing 1,000 people, and for every 1,000 people that you're firing, you're hiring back 5% with new labor skills.
But
whereas the other
is,
95% is out of a job.
Well, I mean, you build robots to repair robots, right? So the prospect of hiring humans to repair robots are going to be obsolete.
Oh, those are temporary jobs too. The same way that we talk about the electricians.
Yep.
We need electricians right now, but that's just like right now for the next 5 years. After that, we don't need them anymore.
Yep. I mean, Gary, I don't know how Americans are not more angry about it. Because like they can
I don't think Americans are aware of it. I mean, there's one thing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's another thing to actually see it. And our people are feeling it, and they're seeing it, they're feeling it because find a job. But it's interesting how society kind of likes to put it back on them. You are a failure. If you are a young male who just graduated college and you cannot find a job, you are a failure. You are a failure to society. That's what they're being told. And as a result, mental health issue go all the way up, suicide rates all the way up. Right now, the reality is this is not you being a failure because you can't find a job. There's no jobs for you.
Yeah.
You were told, go to school, get this degree, and you'll be successful. You will enter this ladder, and you will be successful. And you did that. Exactly what you were told to do. And you graduated, and 5 years later, you're like, you still can't find a job. And that's not on you. There's jobs for you.
Yep.
You're being replaced by AI, and you're being replaced by robots. And then you're being told you have to try harder. There's jobs out there for you.
Right?
Yeah. Go work at McDonald's. They're hiring right now.
Yep.
And that's what people do. And people's like, you folks with biochemical degrees working as a waitress.
I mean, saw during the Great Recession, right? Was bachelor's degrees working at Starbucks, right? And now we're going to see master's degrees fighting for those managerial jobs at Starbucks, right? But even look at Starbucks, like what when all of these white collar jobs disappear? Like Starbucks is sustained by these white collar workers. If they're gone, it's over, right? For a corporation, it's over. I mean, for Starbucks CEO, I would try to figure out how do we ensure that our customers, the white collar workers, have jobs so that they can continue to come to our stores. But they're not thinking about it. All they're thinking about is bottom line and how do we return value to shareholders. But they're not thinking long term. You are killing your golden goose. You're killing the white collar workers. You're not going to have a customer base anymore. I mean, that's probably why they exited, they just can't compete. And aspect of it, but in the long term, it's when you kill all your consumers, who are you going to sell to?
I mean, the global issue is not just an American issue. I mean, look at China. I mean, population of China, you'd think that there's a lot of people wanting to work in China. Mm-hmm. So now they're replacing the electricians that are repairing the electrical lines in China with robots.
Yep.
In China is in this process of replacing human labor as well because it's cheaper. People don't complain. Robots don't complain. Robots don't unionize. So yeah, from the process of production, it makes sense. Replace all labor with robots. They're cheaper. They don't complain. They're top. Our profits are going to go up. until there's nobody else to purchase things.
Yeah, when there are no more customers, what happens then?
I mean, you still have the 1%, and then they're hoping that they're going to make their money and they're going to start producing for the 1%, and they're going to make the money from the 1%. And then basically, rest of the population, you'll have 90% of the population living in slums that are going to be completely forgotten about. They're not going to have access to clean water. They're not going to have to create their own process of production. So in reality, what you see, it's, not going to embrace mutualism. The people that are going to be embracing mutualism are those people that are going to be in the slums that will have to create an alternative economic system to survive.
And I think we're seeing that, right? I mean, concept of mutualism is not very foreign to a lot of people when they actually contextualize what it really means, right? It's about you and me, right? Neighbors, community, right? It's ensuring that we have resilient communities, and we see that the most is at the school level. When you look at like the parents volunteering because the state experiences budget cuts, all right, and then the district cuts more jobs, cuts more programs, and what happens? Parents and teachers are called to action, right, to mobilize, fundraise money to bridge these gaps that were supposed to be the state and the city's obligations to but they're neglecting that because they're like, oh, we can get free labor. And this is go back to capitalism, right? It's that extraction model that turns what is supposed to be mutualism in its pure form of helping neighbors because it helps us too, right? When we help the school, it helps our children, it helps the teachers, it helps everybody. But this capitalist extraction model, right? It's always, they're doing free work. So they all of a sudden found extra money. Therefore, they don't need that money from this other bucket. We can transfer those. We can cut programs, right? Because these parents can fundraise harder to bridge the gap, right? And then we just ensure that, and the whatever, we are ensuring that the system controls everybody else is in place. As long as that's in place, everything else is fine because we know that parents and teachers will bridge that gap because they know they have to. It's their community.
I mean, talk about this too. And I think what you see in every single community, there is a well thought out process to turn parents against teachers and against parents. And both parties are complicit in this process. And I know because, to at one point be part of an education board, and when ran for the position, on sides of the parties, they wanted division between parents and teachers. So if you came in and with agenda, it was we need to get parents and teachers to work together for the children. They didn't want to hear it. You have to either take the teacher side or the parent side. And each party and if you were not on the one side, then you were basically being pushed out of the process. And the reason for it is it's simple. Like, you not want real solutions that are helping the communities. What you want is division, because through this division, you get to control you teachers, you control the school, you control, and whichever side of the party controls that system that day, and not willing to relinquish control. So as a result, they're teachers and parents to fight together, as opposed to, as an asset for the education system that they can actually bring in resources, right? Whether it's building a new gym, whether it's building, so you can have communities helping the education system become better, but we don't want that. We want a broken education system. We want, a system that produces slaves, people that are unable to think for themselves. They want voters to vote how they're being told to vote. And critical thinking is not helping in that process.
Well, I mean, billionaires, right? With like people Musk and Mark, right, who came out and said introspection is not necessary. Like suffering is not necessary because it should always be looking forward, output. When you look at all of our great philosophers that helped build society, right, to where it is now, it all required immense sense of introspection so that they can reflect on, why do we even exist as a species, right? Is it just to produce, or is it actually to flourish and to thrive, right, as a civilization? If it's not about building civilization where we don't self-reflect, we just produce, why not be nomadic and live on your own, right? And quote unquote sufficient, where you're your grown food and you don't rely on anybody else. Like, that's people without introspection, right? Because they are always about production and not about building civilization and building communities. But no, humans need this component, right? Building is for people to feel fulfilled. Going back to the school issue, right? You see, this is what motivates parents and teachers, the good ones at least. There's a lot of good teachers. They are just not empowered, right? And they're underpaid and underappreciated. The stats that we've quoted last time, right? It's 71% of teachers have a second job. 43% rely on some sort of government aid to make ends meet. That is scary, but going back to parents, they're motivated to support their community because they're locked there. Their home is there. The home value is there. That's the schools. So of course they want the best education, the best pathway to social economic mobility.
What do you think about Peter Thiel? Do you think he's the Antichrist? I think he's the Antichrist. Or at least he's the precursor to the Antichrist.
I'm not sure how we define the Antichrist, but it definitely is civilization ending.
But I'm joking about it because he's currently in Rome doing lectures about the Antichrist. Peter Thiel is walking around the Vatican right now talking about the Antichrist, and he's pointing fingers. If you are talking about climate change, you're the Antichrist. If you are talking against AI, you're the Antichrist. If you're trying to manage technology and put limits on what AI does, they're currently in the process of doing targeting for Department of Defense. So they're building killer robots, basically. That's what Palantir is doing right now. It's building killer robots for the Pentagon. But if you are against that, you're the Antichrist. And he's walking around the Vatican. He's parading around making that argument. I think he's the Antichrist. If you're pointing at other people saying they're the Antichrist, I think you're the Antichrist.
Yeah, no, I think there is a long arc of bringing in religious themes, right, into these conversations. That's why I think about, instead of Antichrist, it's anti-civilization, right? They don't want a thriving civilization. They want a production organ, right? And so why are they doing this? Why are they injecting this kind of religiosity into the discourse around ethics, right? Automation, ethics, people's livelihoods. And I think it has to do with the fact that there is almost a religious revival in America where people are hyper fixated on Revelation and the end times, right? And so I think he's tapping into this narrative because he knows it's working, right? He has already a president in place and who surrounded himself with very religious people. I'll say that we're not religious, right? It's religion taken to an extreme, where the focus is not on living the ethics and values of religious leaders like the Buddha, like Christ, Jesus Christ, right? And even Muhammad, right? And so many other religions out there where the emphasis has always been on living these values instead of believing in an other being that is going to bring salvation. Where I think all these religious leaders, their original teachings were all about finding the divine in each and every one of us and through service, right? I think it's funny that we're talking about this as my godmother is in Assisi right now. to visit the relics of St. Francis, right, of Assisi, where he was one of the first, right, to preach about the necessity for the church to anchor itself around poverty, about alleviating poverty, about helping people. And going back to Peter Thiel and all these, I think, billionaires who have, and more important, not just billionaires, but the mechanism that they've constructed, right? There's a lot of people who are not part oligarchs, right, of the billionaire class, who are being convinced to think that adjacency to power and wealth means access to power and wealth. The reality is, these people who are preaching about not having introspection, about making sure that people, everyday people, don't challenge their policies and their goals, right? Calling them the Antichrist if they dare to speak up, right? They are building this mechanism to ensure that, one, they extract the most value, aka wealth, right, out of the system, out of the entire globe, not just America, right? Because if you look at where they're operating, it's global, right? It goes all the way. We think about an Amazon data center. We don't think about the cobalt that's being mined, right, in Africa, and all the minerals that's required to build these chips and build these battery backups, right, and build these copper and make sure that we have copper wires that runs through everything. We don't think about that. But from a system standpoint, where these oligarchs like Peter Thiel, they're building these extraction systems that are strip mining the entire planet wholesale.
It's interesting that you're talking about this because I still have friends at the White House, and maybe I shouldn't name them because they're probably going to get fired pretty fast, but they're actually considering themselves like very devout Christians. And, we were talking about women in the labor force, and now they can stay at home and start families. And I was with them. Did you think that maybe perhaps they're delaying starting because they do not find themselves in a stable position financially? So you actually creating more instability in a woman's life financially is having quite the opposite effect than what you're hoping, that now because they can't find a job, they'll just find a husband and get married. No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think you guys are way, way off the reservation.
I think it's tribalism dressed in Christianity. That's what
Yep,
it is.
agree.
No,
I agree. I agree with you.
It's not. There's nothing. Any like they're preaching right now at the White House, and through the oligarchs, right? These quote that they are instilling values that are consistent with the teachings of Christ, or any religious leaders who founded around service and disparities, right? These people just using Christ as window dressing, because this is all tribalism, right? Either you're with us or you're against us, and that's exactly the kind of mentality that is being embraced by the White House, but also throughout Congress, right? Same thing's happening, and a lot even in the tech industry, right? You hear of tech bros and all this stuff, right? It's this tribalism that is emerging. I'm not sure it's always been there, right? But now they're dressing it around Christianity, at least with the Peter Thiel and Trump cohorts, right? Dressing it around, and it's funny because like across this who recently said around, there are people who are hiding behind religion because there is a God and a higher order that absolves their sins, right? And it's that absolution that they cling to that empowers them to continue to do bad. And I think this is why the likes of Peter Thiel, right, and Trump are using this to exploit people to around their tribe of, let's go and plunder and pillage every square inch of this planet to ensure that we extract value. the most value for ourselves, right? And this is where that concept of adjacency to power, right? Even for, you look at who's supporting him, right? It's, some of the poorest people in the country, some people who are living in the poorest districts, the poorest cities in the country are supporting these billionaires who have, since day one, extracted value out of the capitalist system, extracted value out of people without returning real value. All they return is a sense of belonging. This is this tribalism that they need, right? That the people who are being exploited need to feel included, that they're part of this special mission, right? And again, right, it's this concept that I thought the last time, and we're hearing this in the media, right? Short-term pain, long-term gain. It's okay. These tariffs, don't worry about it. It sucks now, but it's going to be great later, right? And you know what? Your condition now sucks. Just keep voting for us, and it will get better, right? And it's not just Republicans, right? It's also within the Democratic, party too, right? It's the same thing. Wait for the next. Once we're in power, everything will be better. Has it been better? They give people a stick or chew on to keep them distracted from the fact most of the money, both Democrats and Republicans, right? I think the Republicans are more overt about it, are extracted to the 1%, to the 0.1% actually, right? And else is like we look at like during COVID, right? Everyone gets a $6 check a month for a while, but when you look at $1 trillion that were created out of thin air, all that money went to the corporation shareholders, right? And then what happens? They flip, and then they blame the inflation on all these $600 checks that they were sending out to people, when it wasn't. These people weren't buying and splurging on TVs and refrigerators. They were literally using that money because they had no work. They were using that money to feed their family. And now this past several years, right, there's been inflation on these $600 checks that we're sending these people to barely cover the lost wages that these people were experiencing.
This is the real reason for inflation. It's not those checks that were sent out. Those checks made, it was like a drop in the ocean. Money has been printed since 2020.
The last 6 years. It's crazy.
Ended up in the coffers of the 0.1%.
Yep. It goes back to the extraction that we talk about, right? Same thing right now. I mean, we talked about last episode, right, where I don't want to get geopolitical, right? Because we're talking about, I want us to focus the conversation more on Americans and communities, right? They're being affected by all this stuff. But, we see the same extraction happening with gas prices, right? Like most of the gas and oil in this country for consumption, right? We send out when we have, because these companies sell them overseas because there's price for it, a premium for it. But most of our energy is either from here or Canada. It has nothing to do with the Strait of Hormuz, right? But the moment that strait was closed down, what did we see? The first thing we saw was gas prices going up. It's the same thing. People see an opportunity to extract, so they extract, right?
Yeah, and what did the president do? The president came out and said, this is great for America because my billionaire friends are getting richer right now because they are, extracting all this oil in America. And when the prices go up, richer. And this is good for America. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not good for Americans.
Yup.
Now, it's good for your friends.
And I'm looking at even like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that was released. How it released, I think, is very important too, right? It's not just, I think when people think like, oh, they're going to release oil into the market, so it should help tame prices, because there's going to be more volume in the system, but in the market, right? But the way they're releasing it, where they're literally giving it away to these oil companies with a promise to refill it when and if they feel like it, right? No real hard. We're going to release this many barrels of oil. You have to replace it within a year. It's like, no, the terms are you get to have this oil for free, quote unquote free, right? But you will replace it when you choose to replace it. So if I were running a big oil corporation, it's free cash. That's what it is, right? I'll have these hundreds of millions of barrels of free oil that I can sell to consumers, right? Not even give, right? Sell to consumers. Like, they're going to extract tens of billions of dollars from this transaction alone. And I don't think most Americans are aware of that. And they should be aware of it. And more importantly, they should be angry and demand action, because these actions, like you said, right? It helps quote unquote America, but it helps Americans. It only helps those oligarchs who are his friends, right? And not just his friends, right? But when you look at across all administrations, right? It's the same thing, right? It's one, maybe it's more overt for, oil and energy is more overt for Republicans, right? The GOP when the power. But for the Democrats, it's, what is it? It's healthcare industries, right? And all these green energy deals. It's all these billionaires that are benefiting from it. So I wouldn't blame it on one party. I blame it all. But right now, the way that the SPR is being released and the rules around that is not helping Americans. It's helping that 0.1% that already owns these companies. It's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious.
All right. So how end this? Are we going to end this on a bad note again?
Again, I think we always end on a good note. I think, from a mutual standpoint, we already, can observe the current of white collar workers, or they call it the pink collar workers, because most of these jobs are office held by women, right? So they're already displacing women, and what we're seeing is the next extraction is we're going to cut school funding. So what happens? It's mostly women volunteering for the PTAs, right? And they're also teachers too. The next level extraction is we cut your you have to work extra hard, right, to fundraise to bridge that gap. So the question I think for parents and for a lot of Americans is, what do we do, in this situation where we're being double extracted, right? One, they're from the workforce, and two, they're forcing people to work for free to bridge this gap in funding for schools and communities. I say, we vote with our wallets, right? It's not calling for boycott, right? But how we spend our money can have seismic impact on these corporations. You already see, like, literally APAC, right? This is just what we're seeing right now, right? APAC is scared of voters, that they literally are changing the strategy where the monies from these candidates are not coming from APAC. They're coming from very smart. They're like, it's from the same gunk, right?
Not just APAC, but to the big corporations that are in the process of robbing the American people.
Yep.
And you have to see and look at how much money was donated to the political system, and it's never been ever so high. And why through super PACs? Because it's invisible. Because the people don't get to see who's bribing the American political system. Both Democrats and Republicans. So because both of them will support the same efforts and will support the same corrupt initiatives to rob the American people and cater to the 0.1%.
Yep. And like I said, right, I think what can we do to take that back, right? Because we have to realize that right now, while we still have jobs and we still have assets, right, we still have power as Americans. So we vote with our wallet, support local businesses, right? Support your local fundraisers, like, forget all these big national campaigns and focus on the local, right? Build your need it. We need it every day. We live in our neighborhoods. We walk around in our neighborhoods, right? We need to support our neighborhoods. And then I think a bigger possibility for real action is putting pressure on public funds, like, right, these large that invest in these companies. They these funds get their money from employees, right? State employees. Look at your public funds, where your money, where your tax dollars are going, and which funds are supported by it. Put pressure on those administrators, right? To divest from these companies that are creating the extraction and displacement, right, of your very jobs, right? And put pressure on them to divest from that and to more local community efforts, right? Can we develop or create a local community wealth trust, right, with the funds from these public pensions, and begin there, right? So we can take two actions right now, right? Right. One is vote with your dollars, right? More money with small local businesses, people and if you don't know them, get to know them, right? Into your community than you will ever realize. Enhances the tax base. It ensures that you're funded, your roads get repaired, and your police force gets funded to ensure security and safety. And two, put on those public funds. Call them up. Put pressure on them to divest from these large corporations that are doing the extraction, that are displacing you. Don't give these corporations the finances and the funds they need to continue this extraction. Stop them. We can do it. And all it is just a phone call and organizing.
And I think there's also another opportunity, right? So we are in a midterm election year. And I really think that we are past having to vote Republican or Democrat. Our generation is moving away from this thinking that was, if you don't vote for one of them, then you're wasting your vote, unless you start voting for something else. And right. And so, stop voting for a Republican, stop voting for a Democrat. Go vote for somebody that really, really cares about your community.
Yep.
As opposed to the 0.1%. And with us as a mutualist party, we are looking for candidates to go ahead and run as mutualists, to be out there in your community and fight for your community, not for a party. And if you're thinking about it, reach out to us and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction to start that campaign, that you can make a difference in your community.
Yep, absolutely. And this is a call for everyone, from parents to educators to academics to professionals. Whether you're white collar, blue collar, speak up, take action, right? Reach out to us. This is why we formed this party, right? It's not a party in per se, the Democrats or Republicans. We are a non-party party, really, right? It's an organization focused on mutualism, advancing the concept of strong communities build better civilizations, right? And it is beyond just organizing in the sense of waiting for the next election. We should be to force change every day, right? Not just with our wallet, that I laid out earlier, but also putting pressure on government and entities and organizations. Our money influence them. Put pressure on them, right? If you, as an individual, are in the position to stand up and fight for your community, talk to us. We would love to work with you to advance you as a candidate, to ensure that we have more mutualists in power to write the legislation needed to transform America and transform the globe. Right? This is not just about an American issue. This is a global issue, because capitalism's tentacles is extracting from the suburbs in Norfolk, Virginia, all the way to the jungles of South America and the plains and savannas, Africa, right? They're extracting everything everywhere. And we, as a civilization, as people, as humans, as brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers and daughters and sons, we need to organize, because by ourselves, we can be dismissed, but together as one organization, one organized entity, we can create a bigger impact that transforms society.
Well said. And with that in mind, we look forward to seeing everybody next week And also remember, you own the value you create.
Yep. And don't forget to visit our website, mutualistparty.org. And we publish articles twice a week. We do this podcast once a week. But we love your feedback. Join the mailing list and pitch in, right? Whether it is, we're not accepting money, but we would love your ideas and your contributions. Get more people angry to take action. All need to take action before this system crushes every one of us.
And if you want to be a guest on our show, let us know, and we can make that happen.
Yep, we welcome everybody. All right, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. I don't want to say it's a conspiracy theory, but it is a conspiracy theory. That's we'll keep that one for the next show.
Yeah, exactly.